It is the year 1324, and the sun has just slipped behind the low hills, leaving the village wrapped in a gentle hush. You pull your shawl a little tighter as you walk the familiar path toward home, the packed dirt still holding the day's warmth beneath your feet. Overhead, the sky deepens from gold to a quiet blue, then into the muted indigo that signals the village is drifting toward rest. Yet beneath that softness lingers a faint tension you've learned to feel before you see it. The kind that settles in the chest, subtle but constant, like a reminder you carry in silence. Lanterns begin to flicker to life along a few doorways, their small flames trembling in the cool breeze. You hear the church bell toll the evening hour, its slow voice rolling across the rooftops before disappearing into the trees. This is the hour when respectable folk hurry indoors, when shutters are closed, and when every woman walks a little quicker, pretending not to notice how the shadows seem to thicken near the corners of houses. Night is peaceful only for those with nothing to fear. For others, especially women, darkness holds its own rules. You know these rules well, though no one ever spoke them aloud. You learned them in glances, in half-whispered warnings, in the way grown women stiffened when a man raised his voice after sundown. Punishments dealt in daylight were harsh, but punishments carried out at night held a different weight, quieter, hidden, and far more frightening. Not because they were always violent, but because they happened beyond witnesses, shaped by shame and silence. Nightfall offered cover to those who believed a woman's mistakes, real or imagined, were better corrected in the dark. As you walk, you catch the faint smell of smoke drifting from the last cooking fires. A dog barks once, then falls quiet. Someone is latching a gate. These tiny sounds echo sharply in the growing stillness, making you more aware of your own footsteps. You keep your head low. A woman seen outside after the bell rings is rarely given the benefit of the doubt, especially if she walks alone. And you think of stories you've heard, of a wife locked outside until dawn for speaking too boldly, of a girl taken behind a barn for refusing a man's command, of punishments meant not to kill but to control. The sky darkens further, and your breathing slows as you near the edge of the lane. You tell yourself it's only another evening, only another quiet walk home. Yet the heaviness in the air makes it feel as if the night itself is watching, waiting, remembering every unspoken rule you are expected to obey. You whisper a small prayer under your breath, not for miracles, but simply to reach your door without drawing attention. If you're settling in for the night, take a slow breath, and stay with me as we step deeper into this hidden world. From the moment you could understand language, the rules surrounding you were already in place. Quiet, unspoken, and as constant as the turning seasons. You learned them not through lessons but through the shape of daily life. How a woman lowered her gaze when a man grew impatient, how she folded her hands when a priest passed by, how she apologized for things she never did. Obedience was not a virtue you chose, it was the ground beneath your feet. Silence, too, became a familiar companion, curling around your thoughts like a second skin you were expected to wear without question. Purity and modesty were not just ideals but currencies by which families measured their worth. A hemline too daring, a laugh too loud, or a moment spent alone with the wrong person could unravel your reputation faster than any spoken accusation. Loyalty, especially toward husbands and fathers, was treated almost like a sacred vow. A woman's voice was seldom requested, yet her compliance was required at every turn. You carried these expectations the way you carried your basket of chores, everywhere, every day, whether you wished to or not. The enforcement of these rules stretched far beyond the reach of any formal authority. Neighbors watched from windows, exchanging looks that spoke louder than words. Priests reminded women of their proper roles, in sermons that lingered heavily long after the final prayer. Even your own family played their part, for they understood that a single misstep could stain more than just your name. The manor court could punish public offenses, but privately, those closest to you ensured that you stayed within boundaries the law never needed to write down. Curfew bells rang each evening, not only signaling the end of work but quietly marking the hour past which a respectable woman should not be seen outdoors. After the bell, the village warden and his assistants patrolled the lanes, lanterns swinging at their sides as they watched for stray figures. They claimed their duty was to keep order, but order often meant questioning any woman whose steps did not align with expectations. A man wandering late was simply finishing business. A woman wandering late was a problem in need of correction. And so you learned to measure every movement with care. You spoke softly, mindful not to sound too clever or too certain. You avoided sharing more knowledge than was safe, especially the kind taught by older women, like herbs that soothed pain or truths whispered near the hearth. You walked quickly, head down, knowing that even the smallest act could be twisted into suspicion. Women who spoke too boldly were labeled troublesome. Women who knew too much were called dangerous. And women who refused a man's request were often judged before they even opened their mouths to explain. But what happened when those rules were broken, or even suspected of being broken? You knew the stories, though no one dared repeat them in full. Punishments whispered about between laundry lines, tales of women summoned in the dark or shamed before dawn. Some had merely questioned a husband's decision. Others were accused of gossip, witchcraft, or disobedience. Sometimes the truth didn't matter at all. The moment someone believed you had stepped beyond your role, the night itself became a threat, holding consequences that daylight would never reveal. Living under these rules shaped the way you breathed, moved, and even dreamed. Each day felt like walking along a narrow path where one wrong step could send you tumbling into unseen danger. Yet you learned to survive in these tight spaces, balancing caution with quiet resilience. And still, the weight of those expectations pressed upon your shoulders, reminding you how fragile your place in the world truly was. If you've ever wondered how ordinary people navigated such silent dangers, let me know in the comments. Night punishments rarely appeared in village records, yet everyone understood their purpose. They unfolded quietly, tucked beneath the cover of darkness, allowing families and authorities to handle matters without the eyes of the community. After sunset, the village seemed to breathe differently, as though the shadows themselves were invited to witness what daylight refused to acknowledge. Women knew that once the curfew bell faded, any misstep, real or imagined, could be corrected in ways never spoken of openly. In that silence, power moved freely, shaping outcomes no one dared question. Many punishments were carried out at night to prevent public scandal. A woman accused of gossiping about the wrong household, or suspected of meeting someone she should not, might be summoned quietly after dusk. That secrecy preserved reputations while placing all blame on her shoulders. Darkness acted like a veil, allowing families to discipline daughters, wives, or servants without attracting the scrutiny that daylight might provoke. The community maintained its image of harmony, even as private fears drifted through bedrooms like cold drafts. Honor shaped much of village life, and the misbehavior of a woman, true or not, was often treated as a stain on her entire household. Night punishments allowed families to restore this honor quietly. A father might lock a daughter in a storage shed until dawn. A husband might force his wife to kneel in prayer for hours in the dark. These actions, framed as discipline, were meant to reassure neighbors that the family remained respectable, even when no one was watching. Some punishments targeted knowledge rather than behavior. Women who practiced midwifery or herbal healing walked a narrow line between being useful and being feared. If a birth went poorly or an herbal remedy failed, accusations could rise quickly. Under night's cover, a reeve or constable could confront such a woman, warning her to abandon certain practices. These warnings were not always recorded, yet they lingered, shaping how women used their skills and whom they trusted with them. But punishments also served as warnings to other women. A wife disciplined in the dark reminded neighbors to stay cautious. A servant scolded behind a barn taught others to hold their tongues. Even the possibility of unseen consequences helped maintain order. Women learned to listen for unfamiliar footsteps outside their doors or the creak of a gate at an unusual hour. Fear carried its own message, whispering that anyone could be next if she stepped beyond the narrow boundaries placed around her. And yet, the darkest truth was this: not every punishment left a mark you could see. Some relied on humiliation or isolation, leaving women to sit for hours alone in the cold. Others involved forced confessions to priests, who claimed spiritual authority while reinforcing village hierarchies. A lord might summon a woman to answer for a rumor. A manor court could fine her for behavior she never intended. Each punishment, whether physical or subtle, reinforced the same message: power remained firmly in male hands. Regional customs shaped these nighttime acts as well. In some northern villages, women accused of quarreling were forced to stand outside until dawn, exposed to cold winds. In wealthier towns, families preferred private reprimands to protect their status. Rural areas often relied on community enforcement, with neighbors quietly supporting or condemning a household's decisions. Regardless of location, punishments shared the same intention: controlling women's behavior without inviting public debate or legal scrutiny. In truth, the darkness offered a convenient shield for those who wished to act without consequence. Husbands could claim discipline, priests could claim moral duty, and officials could assert authority, all while avoiding the questions daylight might raise. Women, meanwhile, carried the weight of these unrecorded events in their bodies and memories, shaping how they moved through their days. A single nighttime warning could change the course of a life, teaching a woman to lower her voice, hide her knowledge, or shrink her presence. These hidden moments shaped the unspoken rules that governed daily life, reminding women that safety often depended on remaining always unseen and unquestioning. And though these acts were rarely spoken of, their effects echoed quietly through generations. If you're still awake, take a moment to breathe, there's more to uncover gently. Nightfall had a way of changing familiar places. A lane that felt harmless at dusk could feel entirely different once the last lantern was lowered. In that darkness, punishments meant to correct, shame, or silence women took on forms that were more private, more controlled, and often far more frightening than anything done under the sun. They were not always violent, but they were always felt, deeply, quietly, and for far longer than the night itself. And as you listen, remember to breathe gently. We are walking through shadows with care. Then there was secret confinement. This punishment carried an almost dreamlike stillness, though not a comforting one. A woman might find herself locked inside a storage shed or a darkened cellar, the air musty with old grain or damp stone. The only sounds were the scraping of mice, the shifting of rafters, or the distant hoot of an owl. Hours passed slowly in the darkness, measured only by your breathing. The fear came not from pain but from the uncertainty, how long you would stay there, who might be watching, whether anyone even knew where you were. Some women endured this within their own homes, shut inside small rooms until sunrise. Others were held in barns, with hay prickling their legs and the scent of animals lingering in the cold air. The night stretched on endlessly, pressing against your mind in ways daylight never could. Another quiet punishment was the night walk. Some villages required women accused of certain misdeeds to walk barefoot around the outer edges of the settlement. Sometimes once, sometimes several times, guided only by the moon and the whisper of wind moving through the hedges. The ground beneath your feet could be cold and uneven, scattered with small stones that reminded you of every step. You would listen to the distant stirrings of animals, the creaking of branches, and the faint echo of your own footsteps. The walk was meant to humble you, to remind you of your place in the community. But for many women, it became a moment of lonely fear, moving through fields and pastures where anything, or anyone, might appear without warning. You kept your arms close to your body and your eyes alert, praying that no shadow held a hidden threat. Some punishments sought to use the sacred against you. Sanctuary punishments required a woman to remain inside a church through the night as a living warning. The church was cold after dark, its stone floor unforgiving beneath your knees or feet. Candles burned low, their flames flickering softly, throwing long, wavering shadows across the walls. You could smell the lingering incense from earlier prayers and hear the faint settling of old wooden pews. Being alone in such a space brought its own kind of dread. Though meant as a place of safety, the church became a chamber of stillness where you were forced to reflect on your supposed failings while the rest of the world slept unaware. The great doors closed behind you with a heavy thud, reminding you that even holiness could be used to discipline. Shaming rites were no less powerful. Some women were made to kneel at thresholds, doorways, or the edge of the village before dawn. The early morning air was sharp, carrying hints of smoke and frost. You might feel the chill seeping through your clothing as you knelt on hard earth or rough stone. Few people saw these punishments, and that was the point. It was more about what you felt inside. The nakedness of being placed outside your home, the cold biting your hands, the awareness that even if no one was watching, you were not allowed to forget your error. Family-enforced punishments were the most complex of all. These happened behind closed doors, hidden from community eyes yet shaped by the same expectations that governed village life. A wife might be shut out of the house until morning for speaking out of turn. A daughter might be ordered to kneel in silence, praying for forgiveness. These punishments left no visible traces, yet the emotional weight lingered. You learned to measure your words and actions with care, knowing that even the people who loved you felt obligated to correct you. The boundaries of home could shift in an instant, becoming either sanctuary or prison. Each of these punishments carried its own quiet cruelty, rooted not just in action but in intention. They were meant to shape behavior, reinforce control, and remind women of their fragility within the social order. But even in these shadows, there were small lights of defiance and quiet strength. If this part feels intense, take a slow breath. And when you're ready, let's continue. For all the weight that night carried, it was never only a place of fear. In the quiet hours when the village slept, there were moments of gentleness, small threads of connection woven between women who understood one another without needing to speak aloud. These moments did not erase the hardships, yet they softened them in ways that allowed survival, strength, and even hope to take root. You learned early on that while authority watched from above, true protection often came from those who shared your burdens and your breath. Women found their own ways to endure. A whispered warning passed along at the well could save someone from walking alone after the curfew bell. A knowing glance exchanged during market hours could signal that someone needed help, a place to hide, or simply a listening ear. These signals were subtle enough to escape suspicion yet strong enough to build a quiet network of care. You felt it every time an older woman rested her hand on your shoulder for a moment too long, or when a friend lingered after chores to tell you what she'd heard near the manor court. Survival was never a solitary effort. It was a shared rhythm, felt throughout the village like a steady heartbeat. Some women carried knowledge that others depended on. Herbal remedies for sickness, charms for protection, small rituals meant to soothe fears or strengthen courage. Though such knowledge could be dangerous if misunderstood, it was also precious. In dimly lit kitchens or behind shuttered windows, women taught one another what plants eased childbirth pains, what teas calmed trembling hands, what prayers or blessings brought comfort during uncertain nights. These teachings were passed from grandmother to mother to daughter, forming a chain of resilience that stretched farther back than any written record. Even punishments carried out in silence could not break the bonds formed in these hidden spaces. When a woman endured a night of confinement, another might leave warm water by her door the next morning. If someone was forced to walk the village boundary alone, a friend might wait quietly at a distant corner to offer her company for a few steps. Acts like these were small, almost invisible, yet they held more power than any decree. They reminded you that no matter how strict the rules, the people living under them were capable of profound compassion. Even when the world slept, women found ways to keep each other safe. And it was in these moments that you realized strength did not always roar. Sometimes it breathed in soft voices, in shared stories, in gentle acts repeated 1,000 times across a lifetime. These hidden forms of resistance didn't seek to overthrow the world. They simply helped women survive it. And in surviving, they shaped the future in ways they never fully saw. As we return now to the present, let that quiet strength linger with you. History is heavy, yes, but it is also filled with the resilience of those who lived before us. Their courage rests like a warm light in the dark. If stories like this help you see history more gently, feel free to subscribe and join me again. Rest well tonight.